Hey everybody, this is Rick, and welcome to Pastor Have You Seen This? This is a production of Allen Creek Community Church. And this is where we just get a couple of pastors on our staff, either me or Dan or Alex, to comment on something that's on the internet, something that has to do with God, the Bible, Christianity. And you just get a pastor's take, you get a Christian worldview take on something that's interesting on that level. So just so you know, this is a cold read. I haven't seen this before, but our folks have kind of uh, dug up some stuff, or sometimes you can send it in too. So if you have something you want us to comment on, send it to social@ac3 and we will comment on it. And everyone will be blown away by our hot takes on these amazing issues. All right. So here's Rick's take on this.
We're poking at Abrahamic religions because those are the ones that are around us the most and the ones that cause the most egregious violations to human rights around us the most. So, like, obviously, yeah, those are what we're going to talk about. There are double-digit Christian churches within walking distance of my house, and they are the ones that are trying to squash LGBT rights. They are the ones that fought against interracial marriage for a long time. They are the ones that upheld slavery for a long time. They are the ones that, tell me that my family and I deserve to be tortured for all eternity for being who we are and not believing the way that they do. So, like, yeah, we're going to talk about them. They're right here, and they're a clear and present issue in our lives. We're poking at Abrahamic religions.
So he's describing, I guess, his right to poke at Abrahamic religion, specifically Christianity, and point out their backward moral views, that sort of thing. So part of, I guess, what looks like maybe an atheist society. So, first of all, I don't begrudge him, by the way, his right to do that. I think that that's actually a really cool thing. We live in a part of the world where someone like him gets to poke at the let's call it the establishment religion, and if he was to try to do that in Iran, he wouldn't last very long. There would be some prison sentences and maybe some, uh, you know kidnappings or abductions in the middle of the night or whatever. It would just there are places where the idea of dissenting from the main or let's say sort of a mainstream religious view isn't allowed. So I'm really happy that they whatever he's representing here. He talked about us, so I'm assuming he's representing sort of an atheist who. Or an organization that specifically attacks Christian churches for what they do. So I'm happy that he gets to do that. Regarding his specific things, um, I guess it's pretty indicative of sort of the modern skeptic's view of completely divorcing themselves from historical context when it comes to assessing the church's moral track record, right? So it's obviously true that churches upheld slavery. It was obviously true that churches discourage interracial marriage. He mentions something else. I can't remember what. Um, so all that's very true. But then what people generally in this mode don't ask, and they certainly don't betray that they have any awareness of, is the context in which those debates were happening, and as compared to what. So, for example, he's an atheist. So you say to yourself, well, what were the atheists doing in the 1860s when the United States was fighting a civil war over slavery? Well, what the atheists were generally doing, and again, this is painting with a broad brush, but it's no broader than his brush, which basically paints all Christians as slave-holding, slave-affirming folks, which is obviously just ahistorical. But just imagine, what were the atheists doing? Well, very many of the famous ones were giving us a scientific basis for racism. So Darwin and Ernest Haeckel, Aldous Huxley, these are three huge names, and they represented not fringy, weird quackery. They were the scientific consensus in the 1860s, and they were giving us a scientific basis for racism and the continuation of slavery. Aldous Huxley just publicly was shaking his head. He says, "Well, I guess when the war is over, the slaves are going to get their freedom, but I shudder to think what this sort of these subhumans will do when they are no longer oppressed. Because how will they compete?" He basically said they can't possibly compete because they're not equal. And he believed he was justified in saying this scientifically because he believed that they were evolutionarily less advanced. So that's what atheists were saying in the 1860s. So when there were Christian churches affirming sort of a whatever their biblical argument was for keeping the black man locked in slavery. The atheists were the establishment. Let's just say the establishment atheist community, or let's say the non-religious community, was advancing scientific racism. When it comes to and then interracial marriage was just that was an absolutely it died embedded part of the eugenics movement, which was again married to the sort of the beginnings of this sort of eroding Christian worldview in the West and in America. So the eugenics movement believed that if you mixed the races, it was it was a way of denigrating the purity of the white race and that sort of thing. And well, you say, well, who was doing that? Well, churches, yeah, absolutely, there were churches doing that. Who else was doing that? Well, this guy's people. So I'm sure he'd love to divorce himself from those people. Well, guess what? So would I. I would love to divorce myself from all the slaveholding Christians in the United States. So boom, there you go. The accounts are balanced by two equally competing sort of speculative. I repudiate those people who share my current worldview status, right? So he repudiates the atheists who are involved in scientific racism. Well, guess what? I repudiate the Christians who held slaves. So there's a deep ahistoricism that goes on in this. So he can poke what he says, poking at Abrahamic religions as if that's sort of intrinsic to their creed, when it was actually Christians, and as it turns out, mostly white evangelical Western Christians in England and in America who led the way for abolition, and the first societies generally in the world to do so. And so you ask yourself, were the Islamic societies doing it? No. Was the scientific establishment leading the way for emancipation? They were not. Was the was the Hindu religion leading the way to end slavery, which was a ubiquitous, universal institution? No. So when you say Christians upheld and advanced slavery, and they were and they did so uniquely, that's false when you ask the question, as compared to who? Compared to who? So when you say, they said all men were created equal in the founding documents of the United States of America, and that was a what a terrible inconsistency, and isn't that uniquely bad? Well, compared to who? Again, who was not advancing the uh, uh, slavery as specifically as an institution. So, um, those are. I'm glad that he gets to take that shot and to kind of we can have that debate openly in a pluralistic society. I really am. I really am. But in a free and open society, we also get to kind of meet reasons with other reasons and arguments with counter arguments. And this is one of those ones that just fails the test of history, because it stands on the shoulders of giants and imagines that he got there all on his own, and he did not. So that's my take on this little um, video. So if you have others that you want to send to us, do so. Send us at social@ac3.org, and we will comment on them right here on Pastor Have You Seen This? And until next time, see you later.